Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing the Imperium of Mankind's unlikely alliances, the times we have seen them work with enemies in the past, and where we could again in the future. General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. And with that said, let's just jump straight in. Undoubtedly, one of the best things about the 40k universe is that you never have to look far to find the next target or enemy. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is indeed only war. Each and every faction out there is ultimately only interested in one thing: their own survival. None more so than the Imperium of Mankind. There is no two ways about it. The Imperium despises all other races across the galaxy. When the Emperor launched his crusade into the stars, it was to claim them all for humanity. And since his interment upon the throne, the hatred and paranoia has only grown. However, for all that said, and despite this ingrained hatred, there has been times the Imperium has worked with other factions out there, their hated enemy. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, before we begin, I'm going to stick with the most prominent examples in my opinion. In certain cases there will be other examples out there, such as with the Eldari, who we know are just as likely to ally with the Imperium as they are to attack it. But let's begin with the much more unlikely factions. And I'm going to start with the Necrons. As much as the Imperium may have its feelings of superiority, that pales in comparison to the personality of the Necrons. They don't just think the galaxy belongs to them, they know it. All of the other races of the galaxy are beneath them, hated for daring to claim the territory of the dynasties, and despised for being mortals of flesh and blood. The emerging Necrons could very well be the greatest threat to every other faction out there. They have superior technology to the Tau. They are immortal metallic beings to counter the Tyranids. They alone master the anti-warp technology, able to turn back the tides of chaos. They can replenish their losses just as easily as the Orks. And if the full might of the dynasties can reawaken, they may be more powerful than the Imperium entire. The Necrons' arrogance, in all honesty, is well earned. Yet until they can fully awaken, they remain vulnerable. And perhaps that could provide the reason for their cooperation with the Imperium. Within the short story The Word of the Silent King, we were witness to the Necrons and the chapter of the Blood Angels forging a temporary truce and alliance to face the greater threat of the Tyranids. Now, at the time, this was an absolutely fascinating tale, as it not only was perhaps the first ever appearance of the Silent King, long before he appeared on the tabletop or returned to the galaxy in the lore, but also as he referenced Sanguinius, giving rise to theories of the Silent King meeting the Great Angel. It was upon the world of Gehenna that Dante was leading his chapter against the Necron forces, and during Campaign Council their systems were somehow overridden by a Necron communication, demanding Dante's attendance in a meeting with the infamous Silent King. Now, Dante and the Blood Angels, of course, believed it was a trap, but the opportunity to eliminate the mysterious and legendary leader of the Necron Empire was quite simply too good to ignore. So Dante not only went to this parley, along with Captain Tycho, but he also went with a warhead primed and ready, stashed within his rhino. Dante was ready and able to nuke the Silent King, sacrificing himself in the process. However, as it was, an uneasy ceasefire and alliance was called to deal with the larger threat, the beginnings of Leviathan. Now, despite this cooperation, neither side truly trusted the other, and even with the alliance, Dante in fact did plan to kill the Silent King as soon as the Tyranids were defeated. However, in truth he was outsmarted. Not only did Sarek tactfully ensure the Blood Angels took the brunt of the losses, but shortly before victory was achieved, the Necrons teleported away, leaving the Blood Angels to finish the job. In terms of alliances, when it comes to the Imperium, that's about as good as it gets. A delicate ceasefire in the balance whilst you deal with a larger threat, all the while planning the other's destruction. But even here it goes to show that common ground with the Necrontyr, or the Necrons should I say, can be achieved. And with the flood of chaos since then erupting across the galaxy, you do have to wonder if a common ground could be found again. Next we're talking the Inquisition and the Orks. Of all the factions across the galaxy, not including the mindless Tyranids or Chaos of course, perhaps the least likely to ever cooperate with the Imperium of Mankind is the Orks. The race is created and dedicated to fight. They don't care who, they don't care where, they just want to fight. The bigger the scrap, the better. And so with that kind of logic, it does make the Orks pretty much impossible to reason with, because the only reason they're fighting is for the fight itself. Now, I do remember a mission in one of the older Dawn of War games where you ended up allying alongside the Orks. However, in keeping it to real book lore, surprisingly we need to look at the Inquisition. Within the novel Ghazghkull Thraka, Prophet of the War, we saw an Inquisitor Falx of the Ordo Xenos. And in case you're unaware, the Ordo Xenos is the branch of the Inquisition dedicated to eliminating the threat of the Xeno. It includes the Death Watch beneath its jurisdiction, for example. So, of all the people within the Imperium, you'd expect to not be cooperating and working with any alien races, let alone the Orks. You'd expect it to be them. However, this Inquisitor Falx was revealed to not only be working with the Greenskins, but also paying a heinous cost in doing so. The Inquisitor was contacted by a clan of the Blood Axes on a secure channel, revealing that not only did the clan know how to contact the Inquisitor, but that they had done so before. Now here the clan of Orks had claimed to have the Grot Makari captive, the ever-present banner-bearing accomplice of Ghazghkull Thraka. And so they contacted the Inquisitor to offer the Grot to her for a price. Now, why would an Inquisitor be interested in one lowly single Grot, I hear you ask, even if it does wave Ghazghkull's flag about, let alone pay for it? Well, the simple fact is, the Inquisitor was interested, and she did pay. The price was unbelievable. The Orks were demanding 15 unprepared Imperial worlds to raid, and a stash of weapons to go with it. And the Inquisitor accepted. An Inquisitor whose sole duty it was to defend the Imperium from the Xenos. sold out 15 Imperial worlds, 15 entire populations of people to the Orks, and gave them weapons to help them do it. All for the chance to get a grot, who may or may not have been Makari. As far as cooperation between the races goes, this one is pretty incredulous. An Ork even remained aboard the Inquisitor's vessel to help translate during the interrogation. The whole story gives you a glimpse of Orks you certainly won't be used to seeing. And if nothing else, it's a reminder that anything can truly happen in this galaxy. The Imperium who will go to any length to get what they desire. Next we have the Tau Empire. Now of all the Xeno factions, the Tau are perhaps the most welcoming, at least in a sense. Countless former worlds of the Imperium have been absorbed peacefully within the Tau Empire. The Tau emissaries will always approach a new world with diplomacy first, offering its people a chance to join their glorious greater good willingly, to be a welcomed part of their empire. Such is the state of darkness across the galaxy. Many worlds of mankind have indeed turned their backs upon the Imperium, entering by choice into this new empire. Many worlds of the Imperium willingly trade with this apparently hospitable Xeno, feeling neglected by the far-flung lights of terror. For the most part, of course, the true power of the Imperium reacts as you would expect them to, with war. And so the Imperium and the Tau Empire have fought costly wars on both sides. And yet, even upon the battlefield, truces and alliances have arisen, as usually is the way, in face of a larger threat. The arrival of High Fleet Gorgon saw the Imperial and Tau forces cease hostilities to tackle this enemy of both, with the Militarum fighting side by side with the Tau Fire Warriors. The Tau have even allied with the renowned Ultramarines chapter, when their battle upon the world of Malbede awakened the slumbering Necron tombs beneath. Placing their hostilities to the side, the two fought together to tackle the Necron threat, whereupon Marneus Calgar himself allowed the Tau to evacuate before destroying the planet. For every conflict that arises between the Imperium and the Tau, you find more and more evidence of the two combining to face a greater threat. How long will that last with the Tau's continued expansion, however? Well, that remains to be seen. Finally, we have the Eldari, the faction who have had by far the most diplomatic interactions with the Imperium of Mankind. As I said earlier, throughout the years the Eldari have been equally as likely to fight mankind as help them. Some craft worlds such as Alatok actively fight and are opposed to mankind more forcibly than others of their kind. Orfway, for example, has appeared to be far more willing to ally with the Imperium if the need arises. For the most famous example of this, honestly, we need look no further than the current law, with Rabute Guilliman himself, Lord Commander and Imperial Regent, having a representative of the Eldari within his own private council. How the wider Imperium would feel about that if word ever got out is a question for another day. But Rabute, from his own words, has long had knowledge and known Eldrad Ulthran, apparently working with him previously throughout the years. Though Guilliman doesn't fully trust the Eldari, he realises the current state of the galaxy and the threat of chaos really means the two factions have to work together to survive. And so he appears to have a working relationship with Eldrad. at least as can be inferred by the presence of Ilian Nataze, one of Eldrad's seers within Guilliman's council. Now, how long will this last? How much will the other craft worlds cooperate? How much do they already know? The answers are still to come, and only time will tell. Considering the state of things right now, you'd surely expect the Eldari as a whole to realise the benefit of keeping the Primarch on side. And so that's really it. The factions of Chaos and the Tyranids are, for obvious reasons, not ones to be looked at for alliances. And yes, we've got the Leagues of Votann now, but their lore is really going to be expanding as the years go on. As a race of abhumans descended from Terra, there of course has been occasion they've fought beside the Imperium, but so too against. The prying eyes of the Mechanicum creating a particular rivalry. In fact, the Leagues of Votann are willing trade partners of the Tau Empire and Eldari craft worlds alike. Now, what does this all mean for the future? Well, since many of these alliances, the situation within the galaxy has only gotten worse. A lot worse. With many of the factions placing hostility aside in face of a larger threat, perhaps we could begin to see more cooperation coming upon the battlefields. As stated, the cooperation with the Eldari at least appears to be a very relevant part of Guilliman's current thinking. For how long that will take place, well, who knows. Eldrad most certainly is not trusted by many of his kin. And Guilliman is keeping this cooperation secret for exactly the same reason within his own people. For any word of Guilliman working with Xenos would only mount even more pressure upon the Lord Commander's shoulders. Quite simply, he has enough doubters already. The Tau always represent a solid ally if the need arises, but their continued expansion for me is only going to bring more and more anger from the Imperium. In many ways, the Tau are lucky the Imperiums had bigger problems to worry about, for if they had the chance to truly bring their attention to the Tau's borders, well then the Tau Empire would have been crushed already. The Necrons pose an interesting question with their desire and ability to push back the Great Rift. We know Khal is working on his own solution with this, and using Necron technology to do so. In many ways, both empires have the same goal in mind, but I just struggle to see much cooperation taking place in the future. If we do get a meeting between Guilliman and the Silent King, well then that would certainly be an interesting read. As for the Orks, I certainly can't see much, if any, more appearances of cooperation. For me, the Inquisitor was already well beyond her bounds there. But the unlikely alliances of the Imperium, where do you feel this future will lead? Which factions will we see more of, fighting side by side with mankind? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.